They never told you directly, but the signs were always there. Every time something went wrong, somehow it was your fault. Even when you weren't around, your name came up. You were too emotional, too reactive, too rebellious, too much. You tried harder. You kept the peace. You shut your mouth until your silence became just another thing they resented. It's a strange kind of exile, being part of a family, yet always on the outside of its love. And it doesn't start with adulthood. This pattern begins early, and by the time you notice, it's already molded your identity. What most people don't understand is that the family scapegoat doesn't just emerge because they're flawed. It's not because they're the worst behaved or most rebellious. In fact, many scapegoats are the most self-aware, the most emotionally intelligent, the most sensitive to tension in the room. They're the ones who question things that don't make sense, who resist silent compliance, who expose the lies everyone else is too afraid to speak about. But in a dysfunctional family system, truth is rarely welcome. Harmony is prioritized over honesty. Image is more important than integrity. And if one person refuses to play along, they threaten the entire illusion. The scapegoat becomes necessary, not because they've done something wrong, but because someone needs to be wrong. Dysfunctional families have unresolved shame, generational pain, and emotional trauma they haven't metabolized. But instead of doing the hard work of healing, they unconsciously select someone to absorb those ugly feelings for them. The scapegoat becomes the family's emotional landfill, the repository for guilt, anger, fear, and disappointment that no one else wants to own. You weren't bad. You were just available. You were unguarded enough to feel, honest enough to react, human enough to break. And that made you dangerous to a system built on denial. It starts subtly. Blame for small things. Being accused of being dramatic when you're in pain. Being told you're ungrateful after asking for fairness. The punishment never fits the crime, because there is no crime, only the need to put you in your place. Your role becomes fixed, no matter how much you evolve. If you succeed, it's ignored or minimized. If you fail, it's amplified. The rules are different for you. Love is conditional. Approval is rare. You live under a microscope of judgment that no one else seems to notice. And yet, the psychological wound cuts even deeper, because as a child, you don't yet have the awareness to say, "This isn't about me." Children internalize what they experience. You didn't think, "My family is dysfunctional and projecting their wounds onto me." You thought, "There must be something wrong with me." That's the cruelty of scapegoating. It creates a distorted self-concept. You carry shame that was never yours. You question your reality. You apologize for your existence. And over time, you start doing their job for them, policing your own emotions, silencing your own voice, blaming yourself for feeling unloved. But scapegoating is rarely just about family tension. It's a form of psychological displacement. When a parent is narcissistic, emotionally immature, or dealing with unresolved trauma, they're often incapable of accepting criticism or recognizing their own faults. Instead, they subconsciously assign those flaws to one child. That child becomes the mirror they hate to look into. If your mother couldn't face her insecurities, maybe she called you selfish every time you asked for something. If your father couldn't admit his failures, maybe he labeled you a disappointment for expressing any kind of difference. In their eyes, you weren't a person. You were a threat to the fragile identity they were desperately trying to preserve. It doesn't help that in many families there's a golden child, the one who's idealized, praised, and protected. But this too is a role, just like the scapegoat. The golden child becomes the extension of the parent's ego. They perform well, follow the script, uphold the image. But even they are trapped. Because while you carry the shame, they carry the burden of perfection. Still, it's the scapegoat who suffers most visibly, because they refuse to disappear. They fight back, they cry, they collapse. They become the evidence that something is deeply wrong, and for that, they are punished. What's even more painful is how others believe the narrative. Extended family, friends, even strangers might buy into the story. You're moody, difficult, disrespectful. Nobody sees the manipulation behind closed doors. Nobody witnesses the gaslighting, the isolation, The subtle psychological warfare of being blamed for things you didn't do and punished for traits you can't change. You begin to doubt yourself, your memory, your motives, your very identity. You become emotionally hypervigilant, scanning for danger, anticipating rejection, adjusting yourself constantly in hopes of being acceptable. It never works. And the more you try, the more they resent you. The reason this role is so devastating is because it attacks the foundation of your sense of self. Love becomes a negotiation. Belonging becomes a performance. You learn to read between the lines of every conversation, to expect betrayal behind every compliment. You grow up emotionally parentified, carrying feelings too heavy for a child, managing dynamics you never agreed to, and still being blamed when things fall apart. It's not just unfair, it's traumatizing, because the people meant to protect you become your biggest source of harm, and your only coping strategy becomes erasing yourself. But here's the dark truth. The scapegoat is often the most awake person in the family system. You were the one with eyes open when everyone else was blindfolded. You felt the tension they ignored. You named the things they buried. You asked the questions they feared. And for that they turned on you. Because waking up is dangerous when everyone is asleep. It threatens the lie they built their identity around. So instead of joining you in truth, they cast you out. It's easier to exile the one who sees too much than to face the mirror they're holding. And still, you tried to earn their love. You overfunctioned. You became the fixer, the overachiever. Or maybe you gave up and collapsed inward, thinking if you made yourself small enough, you'd finally be enough. But no amount of people-pleasing can heal a wound that was never yours to begin with. They didn't resent you because of your flaws. They resented you because your very presence exposed theirs. Healing from scapegoating is not just about setting boundaries with your family. It's about reclaiming your identity from the false story they wrote about you. It's about grieving the love you didn't receive and the person you had to become in order to survive. It's about realizing that the blame was never yours, and the problem was never you. You were just the one strong enough to carry what no one else could face, and now you have to choose whether you'll keep carrying it or finally put it down. You begin to notice it when you finally step away. Maybe you move out. Maybe you stop calling. Maybe you simply stop explaining yourself. And at first, there's guilt. The kind of guilt that was hardwired into your nervous system. The belief that distance equals betrayal, that prioritizing yourself means you failed them. But slowly, with enough space, you start to see the structure you were trapped in. How every interaction was designed to keep you doubting. How your emotional reactions weren't the problem. They were the evidence that something deeply wrong was happening to you. The role of the scapegoat is often reinforced by silence. Families protect the illusion, even at the expense of a child's mental health. Relatives turn a blind eye. Siblings look the other way. And sometimes when you find the courage to tell your story, people don't believe you. They say things like, "But your parents love you," or "Every family has problems." They don't understand that dysfunction is rarely loud. It's quiet. It's polite. It wears a smile and calls itself tradition. It tells you to respect your elders while crushing your spirit in private. And it convinces you that your suffering is your own fault, not the result of a system that never allowed you to be fully human. The most shocking reason you became the scapegoat isn't because you were weak. It's because you were strong. Strong enough to challenge the cycle. Strong enough to feel. Strong enough to express the pain that others pretended didn't exist. You were the emotional truth teller in a system built on emotional lies. And when you tell the truth in a house built on illusion, you become the threat, the target, the villain in their fantasy. But you were never the villain. You were the mirror. It's difficult to untangle this in adulthood. You may still find yourself unconsciously attracting relationships where you're blamed, where your needs are dismissed, where you feel responsible for fixing things that were never your fault. This is the invisible residue of scapegoating, the echo that tells you love must be earned, that your worth is conditional, that you must shrink to be safe. These patterns don't disappear on their own. They have to be unlearned, consciously, repeatedly. With compassion, you may find yourself over-explaining, apologizing when you've done nothing wrong, feeling guilt when you take up space, flinching at kindness because it feels unfamiliar. These are symptoms, not personality traits. They're survival mechanisms born in a hostile emotional climate. They were useful once, but now, they only keep you from becoming who you were meant to be. Healing requires something radical. Believing yourself. When your entire upbringing taught you to question your instincts, your memory, your perception of reality, the most rebellious thing you can do is trust yourself again. To stop looking for permission to exist. To stop waiting for them to understand or acknowledge the harm, because they might never do that. And healing isn't about changing their minds. It's about releasing their hold over yours. One of the cruelest impacts of scapegoating is the erosion of your internal compass. You don't know how to measure your worth. You were taught to base it on how little trouble you caused, how much you tolerated, how quiet you could stay. But that's not a life. That's a sentence. And you deserve to be free of it. You deserve to express your needs without fear, to take up space without guilt, to exist without apology. Sometimes, the family scapegoat becomes the generational cycle breaker, the one who chooses therapy, who explores shadow work, who confronts inherited trauma, who dares to ask, why do we do things this way? And it's terrifying, because you're going against the emotional current of your lineage. You're unweaving a story written long before you were born. But that's the work of healing. It's not just for you. It's for everyone who comes after you. You become the turning point, the place where the pain finally stops and becomes wisdom instead. There's a loneliness that comes with being the scapegoat. You were isolated for being different, for feeling deeply, for noticing what others ignored. And even when you find language to explain what happened, it can feel like shouting into a void. Because most people want happy family stories. They don't want to hear about the wounds behind closed doors. But your story matters. Your truth is not too much. Your experience is not imaginary. And the fact that you're still here, still searching for answers, still trying to heal, that is proof of your resilience. You may never receive an apology. You may never be embraced by the very people who harmed you. But healing isn't about reconciling with those who broke you. It's about reconciling with yourself, reclaiming the parts of you that were buried under blame, nurturing the child in you who was made to carry adult burdens, and learning that you are not defined by how others treated you, but by how you now choose to treat yourself. You weren't too sensitive. You were responding to pain no one else acknowledged. You weren't difficult. You were reacting to injustice. You weren't broken. You were placed in an environment that refused to honor your humanity. And now, as an adult, you have the chance to rewrite the script, to offer yourself the love you were denied, to surround yourself with people who see you clearly, to create a reality where your worth is not in question and your emotions are not liabilities, but gifts. In time, the identity they forced on you begins to fall away. You stop internalizing blame. You stop second-guessing your emotions. You begin to see that the problem was never you. It was the system you were born into. A system that required silence instead of truth, conformity instead of authenticity, denial instead of healing. But you refused to stay quiet. You refused to disappear. You survived it. And that's not just powerful. It's sacred. The truth is, they never really saw you. They saw their fears, their shame, their disappointments, and they projected those onto you because it was easier than facing themselves. But now, you get to see you. Not through the lens of their dysfunction, but through the clarity of your own becoming. You are not the scapegoat. You are not the problem. You are not the emotional punching bag, the black sheep, the failure, or the rebel without a cause. You are the one who woke up. And that awakening is what sets you free. Every step you take toward healing is an act of rebellion against the lie they told about you. Every boundary you set is a declaration that your pain matters. Every time you speak your truth, you reclaim the power they tried to take. You are not here to carry their shame anymore. You are here to live fully, honestly, authentically, loudly. And maybe one day someone else in your family will wake up too. Maybe they'll look at your journey and begin their own. Or maybe they won't. But either way, your healing is not in vain. It matters. It radiates. It heals backward through generations and forward through time. You became the scapegoat not because you were weak, but because you were the only one strong enough to hold the truth.